Hello, everybody. Adam Parks here with Receivables Roundtable. Today, I am here with an industry technology legend, Mr. Jack Gordon, who is with a number of different companies that we're going to talk about a few of them today. So I won't even start to list them. We don't want to run too far down that rabbit hole until we kind of jump into our main discussion today, which is going to be on product innovation within the receivables management space. And Jack has been involved in a number of different organizations, has innovated a number of technology projects and products that we are mostly all familiar with across the industry. But today I wanted to pick his brain and kind of use his products as an example to talk about the process of innovating new products within our industry. And I know Jack is a fixture at most of the industry conferences around the country, but for anybody who's not familiar, Jack, can you tell us just a little bit about yourself and kind of how you got to the seat that you're in today?
Yeah, thanks, Adam. I can certainly do that. So I am, like probably a lot of the people who are watching this, I am a product of the collection industry. Back in 2004, I bought an agency and ran it for almost 5 years. And that was by far the worst 5 years of my life. But it was the hardest thing I've ever done. And frankly, I'm not going to call myself a success at it. It was a bigger challenge than I was prepared to take on at the time. However, I did leave it in better shape than when I acquired it.
Okay.
So I count that as my win.
That's a victory.
That was a victory. Although, I like to remember. I don't like to remember, but I do like to point out that I got screwed when I bought it. I got screwed while I was running it, and I got screwed on the sale of it. It was a consistent and
learning experience.
Whoever wants to buy me a drink at the next conference and wants the gory details of that, I'm in open. But it was a rough 5 years, and something clicked in me in that final year in 2008. Mm-hmm. I got sued 3 times. That was the first time that I'd ever been sued. And that was my final year running the company. And suddenly, they just came sort of one right after another in that year. And, the day I got served with the third one was the day that I made my decision that my pockets aren't deep enough. My constitution isn't strong enough to do this. It was tough on me personally, emotionally, physically. And so I decided I need to get out. I need to do something else. And the funny thing that happened was that would have been August in 2008. Mm-hmm. The funny thing that was happening in August of 2008 was the economy was just on the verge of crumbling. Mm-hmm. And by the time I got the agency sold in December of that year, jobs were disappearing at a rate of hundreds of thousands a year. Now I was such a mess, right? I was in a rough place in that moment. I just come out of 5 years of running an agency. I didn't have any money left. I pretty much lost it all in that adventure. The economy was falling apart, and I had no real idea what I was going to do next. What I really wanted to do was just crawl under a rock and stay in the fetal position for a while. But that wasn't realistic. I still had a wife and a couple of kids and a mortgage and all of that. And so I had to figure something out. Getting a job wasn't going to happen. I had this one nagging idea. And before I share that idea, I'm going to jump back a few years to before the collection agency. I had worked in the movie theater business for 16 years. The last 4 of those years was as an agent, a marketing agency. Technically, it was a digital marketing agency for movie theaters, but that, digital marketing meant something very different way back then than it does now. But we had innovated software. Anybody who likes to go to the movies now probably gets a weekly email, or gosh, it's moved on to social media now, but they get a weekly communication from the movie theater with all the movie and, the movies that are opening, the ones that are leaving, links to, trailers and trivia questions and special events. All of that information now gets communicated. that wasn't something that was happening back in the, at the beginning of the millennium here. That was something, the very biggest companies had something that did that. But that's something that I had developed in the time that I was working for a movie theater chain here in Michigan. And that's something that in 2000, I went on my own, kept my former employer as a client. I gave them like 4 months notice. I had this idea that I really I figured if I don't do something now, I might lose my chance, because I was hitting that age where, it was not completely unreasonable to think at some point I'm going to get stuck. I'm going to get stuck with a big mortgage. I'm going to be married. I'm going to have other obligations. So I had this idea that I wanted to develop this independent agency that basically handled the communications, the digital marketing communication challenges of movie theaters of all sizes, from large to very small. And in that, we developed the software that completely automated the process of taking data from these theaters, turning it into a usable, basically turnkey weekly communication to all of their customers, and then helping them develop their customer list. Right? That sounds kind of familiar to people who are familiar with marketing. Getting traffic and converting that traffic into business is the basic formula. Well, that worked. I did that, and it grew, and that lasted about 4 years, and I got acquired, and by a bigger company who wanted to do that same kind of thing. And that was a terrible mistake, because I sold it way too soon. I could have and should have grown it bigger and done all kinds of great things with it. Suffice to say, I didn't. I made my decisions. I left that and bought a collection agency. Now we pick up where we started. 4 years later, 5 years later almost, I'm in this position of selling this collection agency, and I had this one idea. Lawsuits are exploding. Right? 2007 is when it began. 2008, they were doing this. And 2009, they were still going up. They finally leveled off around 2011 and have slowly been starting to come down since. But the lawsuits were exploding. I had two things. I had this intimate experience running a collection agency, and I had this previous experience of developing data-driven software that makes a small business's life easier. And I had that moment, that lightning bolt of inspiration in my despair at the end of the collection agency adventure. I had this one moment of inspiration. I could build something that can help this problem, and so I got to it. I took literally the last $250 I could scrape together in my name. I hired a developer over in India to kind of help me build out this little prototype. I started working on getting litigation data out of one of the big litigation services that met this criteria of the types of suits that after that collection agencies were getting hit with, which is mostly FDCPA back then. Very shortly after I started, I added CRA and TCPA. And pardon me. And I just put these pieces together, and I built this really, really rough, crappy little prototype thing where you could upload a list of names and it would spit out some matching lawsuits. And I took that and I did something which is frowned upon today, but I bought one of those little for about $30. I bought a little script that would go out and scrape the web for collection agency email addresses. And listen, I was desperate, right? But this is what I had to do.
We've all started somewhere, Jack. That's why the story's so good, right? It's the realistic story of trying to build a business on minimal resources. Bootstrapping is a real challenge.
Rock bottom of my life. I had, this was it. This was what could either get me out of it or finally push me over that one last final edge. And so I did it. I put it out there, and I got some bites, and I got a few people who signed up off of that, and I couple of them who are still really good friends today. With that, I was selling it for, I think, $69 a month.
Mhm.
And with those first few people, and I did have one luxury of having a wife who worked and was making just enough to support us without my income. So I had this luxury of putting everything that came into it back into it for a little while, and it gained traction slowly, steadily. It gained traction, and I was able to put all of that money back into developing it out further, improving it, and got it to a point where I've been through. I think I'm on my fifth developer, but the fifth one was one that. Excuse me. The fifth one was one that I hired him all the way back, like in 2012 or 2013, right? So I went through the first four really fairly quickly. We're talking 2009, for over like three or 4 years. And now this one, he's been with me for 7-8 years, and he's the one who really, we went back to the drawing board and completely reimagined it and redeveloped it back in 2015. That's the Web Recon now that everybody knows. We take any collection agency, any size, who gets sued, and most of them do. And we can take very little information from them and give them a very realistic small very concentrated list of high risk consumers that they're dealing with, and help them segregate those out and avoid getting sued. And that has been just that's been certainly the great business success of my life. And we have, I think we're in the neighborhood getting close to 400 companies that use that service out there in this space these days. So
it's a powerful service, right? Like, you identified a problem that was on the rise within an industry. You found the opportunity to create some technology that would enable people to solve for that problem. And your approach was, similar to a lot of bootstrap organizations. Like, you got to start with a minimum viable product. You got to be able to demonstrate to people that your idea makes sense, right? It works. Like, this is within the realm of possibility. And then you spent, a lot of time and energy continuing to refine kind of the solution that you had put together, which, I've been reading some SaaS books and some other things, because obviously I've done a lot of software projects as well, and even in the compliance space. But I think the niche that you've been able to generate there and your approach to that marketplace has been incredibly powerful, because it's not just about defend yourself from the lawsuits, right? Like, and I think it's important to point out that a lot of these lawsuits are not necessarily real. There's no real harm. There's not, these are litigious consumers that are out for the purpose of creating litigation. And I believe that that's a challenge. Now, you and I have approached that problem from two different methods, right? Like, you're identifying the high risk people. I'm over here trying to push down the consumer attorneys' search engine results as they're coming out and attacking and trying to cut them off at the source. But then you're also creating this protection blanket for the agency or the debt buyer internally to avoid them from ever contacting that consumer, or to contact it through a different methodology.
The most litigious consumer in America has filed, at this point, well over 200 lawsuits. Nobody is that legitimately aggrieved.
I don't know anybody who legitimately has 200 open credit accounts that then go into default.
And they're not all against collection agencies. Remember, we cover a larger scope than that. Credit reporting, obviously debt collection, and then the TCPA is just this much broader category that just about anybody can fall into, and so a lot of them are there. But it started with this one. It started with collection agencies for sure, and he did that exclusively for years. And there are a lot of others. I mean, I can't pull the number out of the air, but I would say there are certainly hundreds of people who have filed 10 or more of these. High number, probably 700-800. That have filed 10 or more lawsuits in their careers. And yeah, I mean, a lot of them aren't legitimate. A lot of them are very boilerplate. And the agencies that get targeted are really, guilty of being in the wrong place at the wrong time, reaching out to the wrong person more than they are guilty of third-party disclosure or, heaven forbid, using a computer to dial a call or whatever. It's a real, I mean, you can do everything right. I used to, this was intentionally provocative, but I used to do some speaking at conferences with a presentation called "Compliance is Irrelevant," and of course, the premise isn't that compliance is irrelevant in how you run your organization, but it is irrelevant in preventing lawsuits in a lot of cases, because the bulk of those suits are not based on your efforts at controlling your compliance environment. That it's based on reaching out to the wrong person, and that's what our service is really able to help with, right? I like to tell people, I can help you avoid getting sued by people who file suits for a living. I can't help you. I can't help prevent you from creating new litigants, though. If you're out there, if you're being abusive, if you're not following the rules, you're definitely gonna get caught. There's a lot of people out there waiting, and watching and looking for that moment when they can come in and pounce.
Well, you can't control the agency's behavior, but what you can do is provide them with basically the protection of this particular class of litigants, right? So like if they're out there and they're doing illegal things, I mean, you can't control the behavior of an agency or a technology provider and a data provider. So I feel like there's a little bit of a differentiation there.
Yeah. Listen, I'll share something that I feel like is probably my most brilliant marketing innovation here. This is something that I started. It hit me early on, but we are sitting on data, and as you know, data is really powerful, right? It's as a marketing tool, as an analytics tool. You got to have data, and we're sitting on data. And one of the things I realized early on that I could do with that data is reach out to companies that just got sued by somebody with a history of suing other agencies before them. And so for years, we still do it today. For years, we reach out, we send a piece of mail, physical direct mail, to agencies that and other businesses that get hit by some of these frequent filing consumers. And we say, had you been using us, we probably could have helped you avoid, and the window of the end. You see, now I'm not a collection agency. I don't have the same restrictions that agencies do, right? Inside the window of the envelope, you can just barely kind of see the name of that consumer that filed that lawsuit, and so that's irresistible. That's
how you get your open rate.
To get the open rate. And once they open it and we're showing them the full history of all the suits that this person has filed before they hit that company, then that's a pretty powerful form of marketing that
I'm sure when they open that, it's going to be multiple pages for some of these consumers.
For some of them, sure. In fact, my very first ACA conference, I had one fairly prominent industry agency owner make a beeline through the exhibit hall. It wasn't even open yet. He snuck in, and I watched him coming all the way from of course, it was my first conference, so I was all the way stuck in the back because nobody knew who I was, and I certainly didn't register early for it. And I watched this guy coming in this empty exhibit hall, except for other vendors setting up, and walking right towards me, showed me the letter, said, I didn't even know I had been sued yet when I got this from you. I was impressed. Sign me up. And that company, he's retired now, but that company is still with me to this day.
Jack, that is awesome. As a marketing guy, I absolutely love that story. I think that's fantastic. You've been like I said, an industry legend. I mean, being able to identify that problem, solve for that problem, innovate that product, continue to grow it, and you've been an active participant in all of the industry associations, and really just a fun guy to to have a drink with, or to share a meal with as well. So I through the years, not only have I appreciated kind of what you've been able to do, and how you represent yourself and how you represent the industry, but also for your friendship. It's just really been a lot of fun to get to know you through the years. I didn't know all the details that I've gotten today about kind of the historical context as to what brought you to your current position today, but this is a lot of fun, man. This is a cool story.
Well, that's that. You're too kind, but yeah, thank you. And right back at you. This is a it's a weird industry, and it's a great time to I think to bring us back around to where we were going here. It's a great time to be an innovator, because very clearly the old ways of doing things are not working as well as they always have. I mean, you see, a lot of agencies that are coming up now and starting in the digital age, right, and never getting kind of mired in the whole old infrastructure of especially with things like Hunstein out there, right? Never getting mired in the old ways of the whole lettering. History of lettering, the history of dialing the way you've always done it. Now you have other digital tools, emailing, texting, right? And they're all landmines. No matter what, the old stuff is landmines, the new stuff is landmines. And every time we go out there and stand in an exhibit hall, there's always a couple of new companies that are coming out with their take on how to solve some of these problems, the old ones and the new ones, and we haven't ever actually solved them, but we've evolved along with them, and it is always exciting to see what people are doing, and where they're going, and where they think, how they think they can solve this. And I've always said, if somebody out there can solve frivolous lawsuits, I would be really happy to open up a hot dog stand on a beach somewhere.
Look, I think that's your niche, right? Like, that's not an easy amount. I've done data scraping on a global scale. I've done a lot of these kinds of projects, and I think the technology that you've developed, and the tools, and the level of care that you put into these things, and your collaboration with your individual clients, and all of that has really set you apart. I feel like you've got a pretty strong competitive advantage at this point. I don't think that there is any way to solve the problem itself other than to provide information and to make people feel comfortable. But it's the same thing from an innovation standpoint. Everybody is looking at solving whatever project or whatever issue that they've identified that has affected them in their lives, and leveraging the expertise that they have to find it. But I think that the process remains the same. It's a minimum viable product. It's getting that product into the marketplace and having it tested by some people in the wild, because what you put on the whiteboard is very rarely how it functions once you roll that piece of software out or bring it out into the marketplace post-testing. So I think that whole process of being an innovator is really kind of a fun thing, and maybe we'll do a webinar or something together at some point, just talking, deeper about, product innovation, and maybe bring a couple people together for that discussion.
Do I have time to share one more story?
Sure.
Because I think this plays right into what you're just talking about now, and I love this story, and it's a little painful too, but that's
honest stories usually are.
Right? So you mentioned, I think you mentioned at the beginning, I have a couple of other businesses in this space, and one of them, to circle back to the beginning of my last story, when I first launched Recon, I had a number of people reach out to me who I'm still friends with today. One of them was somebody who a couple of years later brought me this idea for this FDCPA training course. And his pitch to me, I think we were in Chicago at the Westin, the downtown Westin, at a back then I believe was a NARCA conference, and he says to me, I think there's an opening in the market for this. I think we need more FDCPA training. I want to do that with you because I've seen what you can do online, and it's really impressive. And I'm like, okay, I thought it sounded like a good idea. I had no idea how much work it would actually be. It was a lot of work. 18 months later, we launched this course, and it was a great course. It's still going today. We've put over 8,000 people through it in the last since July of 2012. Well, and so I bootstrapped it though, right? We didn't put any budget into building this thing. So we used some tools that were out there and free or very close to free. About 3 or 4 years ago, I finally got fed up with the tools that we had used, right? They were just a little too buggy, too unfriendly, required too much support, and that's not the level of support that I like to give. I like to make things easy for people. So I started looking for a new platform, a new online learning platform, and there are a number of them out there on the marketplace. And I saw. In fact, I bought a bunch of them. I auditioned them. None of them made me happy because here I was running something pretty specific, right? A compliance course that had really sophisticated testing and questioning. But my, sort of the big aha moment when I was trying to find a new platform to run this on was this realization that my student is not my client, and vice versa. My client is not my student. Mm-hmm. I'm selling this to companies, and these companies have 1, 5, 10, 50, 100 or more employees. Those are the people that need to take the course, right? But they're not the ones that are buying it from me. So I need to have this platform that really enables my clients to, again, very robustly manage their people, set them up, purchase enrollments, assign those, specific enrollments to whether it's just the full course or just the test at the end for a new certificate, or we offer daily questions, whatever. Make sure they're getting the right thing, review their tests after they take them, reset them if they fail and they need to be reset. A lot of the stuff that we ended up having to do through help tickets. And I really wanted to find a software platform that would do all of that. To jump ahead, we didn't find it. Nothing out there made me happy on all those different levels, right? The sophistication of the testing or the sophistication of the user management. And so we decided at that point, we tried to fix the one that came the closest. And after my developer sort of, made good progress on that, fixing some of the problems that they had, what he said was, we've really done the hard part here. Why don't we you should go all the way. Let us code something that's elegant and that really does solve all the problems and is all encompassing. The moment he said that to me, I'm like, that's a business. That's something that the marketplace needs, because I looked for it. I tried to find it. I couldn't find it. There's got to be others out there who need something that really focuses on this kind of a problem. 3.5 years later, here we are. We're on the verge of launching it. It's called accredited.net, and it is an LMS that's hyper focused on people with that same kind of problem. If you have teams of people, and here's where it's really powerful. I've got a friend who he's been a salesman for decades, and he's good at it, right? He's very natural, and he's thinking, he's been thinking about doing a training course. And we had this conversation. I was kind of talking him through it, and he thought that he was going to build this course that he was going to sell to people, right? He consults right now with like a lot of web designers, independent web designers. He's like, I could build this. I know all of them would buy it. And what I said to him was, okay, what if you think bigger? What if instead of just trying to sell it to individual web designers, and you can certainly do that. There's nothing wrong with doing that. But what if you built something that instead of selling to individual web designers, what if you identified every company that has a sales department, right? And now you've got this thing that is general enough that it applies to everybody, but figure out your niche, right? You can't make it so general that it also applies to nobody. But figure out your niche, identify all the companies that have teams of salespeople that would benefit from that, right? And I'll try selling it to them, because what you're going to see happening isn't that, you're working hard to sell this thing to every individual who buys it. Now you're working to sell it to every individual company that not only has, maybe 5, 10, 15, 100 people that need to take that, but they're going to be firing people and bringing new people in. And every time they bring somebody new in, they need to buy in new enrollment to assign to that new person. A year later, maybe there's a refresher test they can take, right? And a new certificate they can earn to show that they're going through this ongoing training. It's a small shift in thinking, but it's exponentially bigger.
Absolutely.
Look at it that way.
We're going to have some offline conversations about that as well, because that sounds like a really cool platform, and I've got a couple of thoughts as it relates.
I'm really proud of it. We've been working so hard on it, and it's just we've thought of so many things to make the job easier, and that's what we do, right? We in this office, I've got a great team. I've got a lead developer, I've got a salesperson, I've got the office manager who does all the billing and accounts payable and receivable, and I've got a couple of people offshore who do data mining and social media and stuff like that, right? I've got my team in place, and what we do here and what makes this so much fun is, I've got 5 or 6 businesses right now. We focus way too hard on building something really, really cool, right? Where I feel like other companies might have spent half the time. We've just gone overboard, built something that we're really proud to launch right now. And I know there are people out there who have a different philosophy on that, right? Just get that minimum viable product and iterate. But I have a hard time letting go of something until
you feel like it's perfect.
Until it's something that
everybody's got an approach to it, though, right? But that's the beauty of innovation is that you've identified a problem, you're solving for that problem, and the approach that you take, I think, varies based on resources, developers, and other things, right? Now you're in a different position. You've got cash flows and resources to build from. You've got a team to work with. And but when you were early on, you had to start with something, right? And so I think our perspectives change. And I've been going through the same things as I've been looking at some new businesses and new opportunities. Now that I have a team and I'm established, it's a little bit different in the approach that I take. But early on, we were taking the same approach, which was get something out there, get it into the marketplace, and continue to iterate. But I think we're out of time, Jack, but I really want to thank you for coming on here. This has been a great conversation, and this is why anytime that you and I have a meal, it tends to go on for hours, because there's just so much good information to share back and forth, and I can learn so much from you in each discussion. For those of you that are watching, feel free to leave comments below, both on LinkedIn and YouTube, and Jack and I will be responding to those. If you have any additional topics that you'd like to see Jack and I talk about, or additional guests that you'd like to see me interview on this program, please feel free to leave those comments below as well. We'll be continuing to create great content for the industry, specifically in receivables management. Until next time, Jack, I'm sure I'm going to see you at an upcoming conference in the very near future, as always. But thank you again so much for taking the time to participate today.
Looking forward to it. My pleasure. Anytime. And I look forward to seeing you at that next one too.
Awesome. Thanks, Jack.
All right. Thank you.